The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Tell me again why the NFL owners reportedly pay Roger Goodell more than $60 million a year. They pay him that kind of money to continue to perform like he did yesterday in the annual State of the Game address, which is done a hell of a lot differently than the one I first attended that was done by Pete Rozelle, where he would stand at the podium, give a little speech, light up a cigarette, and say, what do you got? Now it's a lot different. Maria Taylor is the host. Goodell comes out looking like Mr. Rogers with sweater and sneakers, and he's there to dodge. You know, we got an owner with his name all over the Epstein files. We got concussion issues. We got issues with officiating. We got this merger between ESPN and the NFL Network, which is certainly going to cost us all a lot more money to watch NFL games, which is exactly what they want and exactly what they're able to do because we are watching. We're watching. And more international games. And wait till you hear what he says about what the players allegedly told him about all these international games. And by the way, he said, and I have no doubt this is going to happen within the next couple of years, that we will have 16 international games. Every team in the league will play a game overseas during the course of the season. Oh, yeah, and they want to throw in the safety stuff, too. So we'll pick apart what Goodell said yesterday and what was, I guess, about a 45-minute news conference. Also, there is some Super Bowl news, not huge news, but Drake May, as if there was any doubt, he was going to play. He banged up his shoulder in the AFC Championship game and didn't practice last week, partly because of illness, but he did practice yesterday as the team went through about a 90-minute workout at Stanford University. And he said, I'm feeling good. I'll be just fine. Never has a Super Bowl quarterback said, yeah, I'm banged up for the course of the season with, the 3 playoff games or 2 playoff games and the long 17. No, they're always going to play. And there's always some Super Bowl injury that causes stress going back to, I remember when Mark Rippon sprained his ankle during practice. And in those days, Joe Gibbs hit during the week. They would hit 2 or 3 times. And they had a practice which got out of hand, according to players who were involved in it. And Gibbs said, we're going to get somebody killed out here, so we better call it off. But Drake May says he's good to throw, and should be fine on Sunday. So the 60-degree temperatures in California are helping him to get the shoulder ready to play. All right, let's get to the news conference yesterday. It's such a folksy thing that Goodell does, showing up looking like, he's going to teach a 5th grade class. I mean, it's just all part of the marketing and the imaging and the whole deal. There was news before the news conference yesterday, and this goes to show you, I guess, what they think of France. They're going to play a game in Paris during the season. And that game, I believe it's in October, is going to feature the Saints and the Cleveland Browns. So, it's like, yeah, we got a lot of good games that we want to put on, like Monday night and Thursday night and Sunday night. So this game, which is going to be on early in the morning because of the time difference, we're going to let you have the 2, stems and seeds of the league here, the Saints and the Cleveland Browns. Now, there are some more international games, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Washington has a home game this year, which will be an international game. Like last year, they played in Madrid against the Dolphins, but it was a home game for the Dolphins. This would be technically a home game for Washington, and they will play overseas. But get a load of what Goodell said about how popular these international games are, saying that countries from around the world are begging, can we get one of these games? More importantly, listen to the end of this 30-second soundbite where he tells you what players who play in international games are telling him.
It's now about saying no. We don't have enough capacity or don't have enough inventory. And we are getting great reactions from our teams. They all want to play. Our players loved it. One of the greatest things from last season was talking to our players and our coaches about how proud they were to be there and talk about the game, to help globalize the game. And they felt like ambassadors, I think, and they enjoyed the experience, and that's really part of it.
What brown-nosed player would say to Roger Goodell, thank you for helping us to become ambassadors here? This reminds me of a certain leader who likes to go around saying that big, strong men approach him with tears in their eyes and tell him what a great job he's doing. No, it's a grind in the NFL, and players hate to be out of their routine. If players had their way, they would play every game at 1 o'clock in the same time zone on Sunday afternoon. It takes a week to get your body back in shape. You got to schlep all the way over to some foreign country. There's more dog and pony shows that you have to participate in. It's a job. It's a grind, and you've made it 17 games, and you're going to make it 18. I'll get to that. I don't believe it. I don't believe there's a player that walked up to Roger Goodell and said, oh, it's so great that we can be ambassadors for the game. They know they're cannon fodder. They get paid very good money. They know their bodies get used up playing in the NFL. They know that they're going to have physical problems later in life. Ambassadors for the game. Really? I'd like to hear something like that on tape. I think that's Goodell embellishing a lot. I just am not buying that. Another thing he said, which I think many fans would disagree with after this season. I think there was more criticism of the officiating than ever this year, and there's a variety of reasons for it. Not all of the officials' fault or the league's fault, but Goodell actually had the chutzpah to say this.
I'm so amazed at how good our officials are. I mean, we spend time all week looking at various angles and still debating it a week later. These guys have to make a split-second decision. And the men and women on our field are incredible. And I think that they've proven over and over again they're really wonderful at what they do. On the other hand, it's a difficult sport to officiate. It's fast. It's quick. And we have to be able to use technology, in my view, to try to prevent the obvious errors. And now they're not all obvious. I think depending on which team you're for, they're obvious in your eyes potentially. But at the end of the day, we see if there's an obvious error, we need to be able to fix it. And I think technology can help that. A replay assist has been, I think, a terrific advancement for us. It's been done quickly. It's been able to address those issues before a challenge is even made. We need to expand that. We need to bring that into different categories, potentially personal fouls. Should we be able to work on the officials or upstairs or the replay officials or New York, depending on the circumstances? But we should have the discussion, should they be able to throw a flag? So that if a flag isn't down, they could put a flag if it's an obvious error. There obviously has to be structure to that. There has to be a lot of discussion about how that happens and when. But I think all those things are things that the competition committee will spend some time on.
Yeah, well, they've been trying to get this right for a long time. And, well, you'll get to this here. He's right about this. There are more cameras now. You see more. But the errors are glaring, and the ability to fix them are not as good as they should be. And so Goodell is embracing the idea, and from what I've seen from AI, the way that video can be altered and pictures and all the fake posts that you see, it's got to get to the point where you can isolate every player and maybe even get to the point where AI is calling penalties. Now, the way the penalties are called, it's not always the letter of the law, what they'll let go. So there's nuance to it. But this is Goodell on how he believes that technology is really going to it'd be a different letter here. Make officials great again.
I think technology is something we need to embrace in the game in every way we can, and whether it's on the fan side of it and making our fan experience better, or whether it's with our media partners in trying to embrace that. And so many of the things that we have today, some of them didn't exist 20 years ago. And people say, well, what would you do? I just heard it the other night on a broadcast. They're saying, what would you do without the first down marker? That's virtually on the field. Which some people don't realize that it's virtually on the field, which is amazing to me. But I think it's also really important in officiating for us. I truly believe that technology can help our officials. They do a great job, but it's an incredibly fast game. The technology that you all bring with the super slow-mo, you now have 3 times the number of cameras that we had several years ago. They can move the angle. We need to be able to use that to help our officials get it right. They want to get it right. They're incredibly dedicated professionals, but we need to give them that tool. And I think AI is going to be a real opportunity there. We're talking with our partners and talking with others about how we implement that to help our officials.
I think it's probably going to come. Look at how tennis was changed by QuestTech, and baseball to a degree. They used it some this year. Technology's there. You got to use it. And, I really hadn't thought that much about AI, but that's probably going to be the case. I mean, we keep talking about full-time officials. I just don't know what else you could do. You can watch tape, but how much prep could you do, and how much would it change the calls? Would it erase the bad calls? I don't think it would. This has been out there for years. This isn't like when they went to 17, they thought, how about 18? They've been talking about 18 games for years. And they tried to ram through 18 in the last collective bargaining agreement, which goes back to 2011. It wasn't implemented until, 2020, right? 2020 was the first year we had 17. Or 2021, actually. 2021 was the first year, 17. But 17 is going to lead you to 18. You're going to have 18 games. And the owners have been talking about this forever. I think they're going to even try to get to 20 and do away with exhibition games. And there's nothing more useless than exhibition games. The best thing the teams can do now to prepare for the season is to have joint practices, which Commanders have been doing for years. They go up to New York, the Jets, or Ravens will come here. And that's the way to do it, because nobody plays in these games. It's a joke, and they televise them because they can, and because they can jam the season ticket price down to the season ticket holders' throats. Make them pay for not the 8 home games that are 9 home games, but 10 or 11 or 11 or 12 with the extra 2 or 1, depending on how many exhibition games you have. But this is an answer that Goodell has been giving for years, and they have 17. Here's the way they will get 18. They will go to the players, and they would say, would you like to play 18 games? And the players will say, we will never play 18 games. And the owners will say, well, here's an extra $2 billion. And the players will say, okay, we're going to play 18 games. So this is Goodell with the song and dance and seltzer down your pants as to how he expects 18 games to be implemented, but it's really too early to talk about that.
We have not had any formal discussions about it, and frankly, very little, if any, informal conversations. I've heard people talk about it in the context. It is not a given that we'll do that. It is not something that we assume will happen. It is something that we want to talk about with the union leadership. As you know, they're going through a transition, and hopefully that'll get solidified this spring. And as they determine their priorities, we are doing the same on the ownership level so that when we get together, we can address these issues together. And I think you remember in 2011, as part of the CBA, we committed to the players that we were going to have this conversation, and we were going to talk about the pluses and minuses. When we moved from 16 to 17, we had that conversation. I think that went quite smoothly. But the challenges will be different here a little bit. And it'll depend on a lot of factors, including safety of the game. What other changes can we make to the game that are going to continue to improve that from a safety standpoint, but also a competitive standpoint? Should we have 2 buys? What are the roster sizes? There are a number of issues that need to be discussed with the players, and that I'm sure will be a focus, or at least a component of the next CBA, at least in the discussion phase. But there are a lot of things that I think are going to be on the table.
Well, one thing that has to be on the table is leadership for the Players Association. They have made a mess of things. DeMaurice Smith, they kind of pushed him out the door. You can debate what kind of job he did. He used to get, very angry when people would say, well, they forced 17 games down your throat. No, they didn't. We negotiated that. So he's out. They appoint Lloyd Howell. Lloyd Howell had been with Booz Allen. He really didn't have a background in this, and DeMar Smith was an attorney. I don't think that Hal was, but we find out that Hal is spending Players Association money to go to strip clubs, so he's out. David White is the interim executive director, and Hal had already started the discussions about 18 games, and Hal. Another stupid thing that Hal did when he was asked about the 18 games, he said, well, who doesn't want more football? No, you imbecile. You're representing the players who are going through a meat grinder. They don't want 18 games. They'll play 18 games if you pay them enough money. But you don't say, who doesn't want more football? No. So he's out, and they got to find leadership, and maybe it's David White or they elect somebody else. But and I think the player who is the head of the Players Association also resigned. It was a big mess. So once they get their act together, they'll sit down with the owners and Goodell, I guess, and they will say, we're not taking 18 games. And they will say, here's what you're going to get to take 18 games. You're going to take it. And they'll say, okay. That's the way that's going to work. Last thing from Goodell, I'll get to more on the diversity issue, which is a big part of what's going on in the league right now. As they went 0 for 10 on hires, you could say that Robert Saleh, who's I believe Moroccan, I'm not sure, but he's the one minority who's now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Otherwise, 9 white guys filling the 9 of the 10 jobs. So. This is about what we've spent a lot of time on last week and is still an issue with, by the way, a report from Adam Schefter today that Robert Kraft did not make it. So Belichick not making it in the committee that selects those kind of things, coach and owner. And the 3 senior candidates, looks like they all made it. Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, L.C. Greenwood, defensive end on the Pittsburgh Steelers, Steel Curtain. So that is probably what's going to be announced on Saturday, along with the modern era candidates who are up for the Hall of Fame, and Joe Jacoby no longer eligible for that. I'll get to Jake a little bit later in the show. But this was Goodell yesterday asked really one of the only really hard questions that people put to him. I thought it was very much of a softball news conference, including. You know, they did ask about the fact that Tisch, one of the owners of the Giants, is all over the Epstein files, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this was as confrontational as things got at the news conference yesterday with a reporter from Boston.
Seeing the Seahawks and Patriots up here, I'm really tempted to ask you another Deflategate question, but we'll move on here. I believe you're on the board at the Hall of Fame. There's a report that Bill Belichick didn't get in this year. He didn't get induction. Curious your thoughts on Belichick not making the Hall of Fame. And a lot of the voters that have spoken out have cited Spygate. Do you feel, since you were the one who handed down the punishment, any responsibility on your part for, Bill not getting in this time?
Well, Ben, your question may be a little misleading for everybody. Okay, so the Pro Football Hall of Fame is not in any way controlled by the NFL. We have no say in the voting process. We don't participate in the voting process. I think you know this, but I want to make sure that the question doesn't lead people to that conclusion. I think it's really an important honor, and it's something that should be done with a lot of clarity, a lot of understanding of what's expected of those voters. I'm not even sure I'm aware of it. I've never been part of that process. Our board does nothing more in the voting other than to approve the leaders of the media that participate in that. And it's a single vote. It's just, will you approve this panel of selectors? So we are not involved in it. Listen, Bill Belichick's record goes without saying. Same with the Patriots and Robert Kraft, who's also a candidate. They're spectacular. They've contributed so much to this game. And I believe they'll be Hall of Famers.
Yeah, well, not this time, it looks like, with this report from Schefter today that Kraft didn't get in as well as Belichick. As far as, what Spygate meant, remember, Goodell really went, that was right when he started as the commissioner. And that was the 2007 season when they went undefeated and lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. That Goodell said, well, we collected all the evidence from Spygate and we destroyed it. Therefore, if something new appeared, we would know they were lying to us. And I think it cost them maybe a fine of whatever it was, million, and they lost the first-round draft pick, and they had plenty of those stocked away. So that was no big deal for them. On Deflategate, a little bit harder. They came down on Brady, missed 4 games, but they still won the Super Bowl that year. So I don't know what that meant. But that was part of what went on yesterday. I think the two things that were of most interest and most controversy is that you have one of the owners of the New York Giants all over the Epstein files, what Goodell said about that, and the fact that they did such a horrendous job this year on the Rooney Rule, that minority candidates with almost a record number of jobs open at 10 didn't get any. Didn't get any of the open jobs, and you're down one because Mike Tomlin left the Steelers. So that's one less. I think there's now 4 African-American coaches in the league. So we will get to that and what Tony and Mike said yesterday on PTI about that terrible record this year and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Sleep at the switch. That doesn't happen very often. So we move on with more from the Roger Goodell news conference yesterday. We covered some of the issues like the desire for 18 games, which he says they haven't even talked about with the Players Association. They will, and they will ram it down their throats. Fixing officiating with more technology, claiming that with all these international games that they play, and he says they want to get to 16, that players are coming up to him and telling them how important it is to be ambassadors for the game and play overseas. Oh, please. So then we get to the stories of what's been going on with the Epstein files and 3 million pages released in the last week. Russell Wilson mentioned on there, and he took to Twitter to deny it, or not deny that his name is there, but that there would be any connection to Jeffrey Epstein. He wrote, "Nope, absolutely not. Not today, Satan. Some random plane broker tried to sell me a plane. I had no idea whose plane and never bought the plane, never talked to, nor never met the man." The email chain goes back to January 27th, 2019. Wilson was still in Seattle. One message from a broker said that Wilson was calling Gary, I guess Gary would be the broker for the plane, nonstop after seeing a plane and wanted the seller. It sounded like Wilson wanted to grab the aircraft when his contract talks played out and keep it under wraps. At the time, Russell Wilson was nearing a new deal with the Seahawks and finishing out the process. But any athlete, no matter how much money they have, buying a private plane, that's stupid. You could lease a private plane. There's no reason to own a private plane. Scottie Pippen did that, lost a ton of money. Really dumb. Another email laid out terms for an option buy, $500,000 up front, 90 days to decide, $2.7 million asking price. A different proposal had a $3.2 million purchase with engine fees and upgrades tacked on. Let me tell you something. It's like a horse. You can't. If you keep a plane in the hangar, it costs you a lot of money. Don't buy a plane. Good thing he didn't. And whatever connection there was with Epstein, that may or may not come out in the wash. Meantime, we got the story of Steve Tisch, who's one of the co-owners of the New York Giants. He's been very big in the film industry. He's made films like Forrest Gump, and he is a co-owner of the New York Giants. And his name appears in the Epstein files at least 440 times in the 3 million pages that were released last week. And he released a statement about this, trying to get ahead of this. And he said, let me get the quote here. He said, quote, "We had a brief association," meaning he and Epstein, where we exchanged emails about adult women. And in addition, we discussed movies, philanthropy, and investments. I did not take him up on any of his invitations, never went to his island, and we all know that he was a terrible person and someone I deeply regret associating with. But these emails are after there was, in fact, an indictment of Jeffrey Epstein. So Roger Goodell was asked about that, and he did what he always does. We have to gather all the facts. That's what he does. We have to look at everything. We're going to look at everything. And so that he's done this many, many times over the years. I mean, he's been on the job, almost 20 years. He says, "Well, look at all the facts." And so Connor Orr writes this it at USA today. He says the NFL, when it wants to exact punishment and takes what it believes to be a moral stand, can absolutely do so with a rich history. Dan Snyder was fined tens of millions of dollars and wiped off the football landscape for creating a hellscape of working environment in Washington. The same can be said for Jerry Richardson, whose workplace sexual misconduct earned him a swift removal from the NFL ownership fraternity. Yet other owners whose conduct has vacillated from inappropriate to abhorrent to downright deleterious to the brand of football, and finally, some criminal offenses continue to enjoy positions of leadership atop one of the world's most popular sports leagues. As it pertains to the players, there's also a tapestry of forceful punishment during the Goodell era. Remember Michael Vick being suspended indefinitely by the NFL for the pit bull scandal. He did go to jail for 2 years for that. Plaxico Burress fired a gun in his own leg at a nightclub. He was kicked out of the league as well, suspended, I should say, and then did come back briefly. And as Conroy writes, though this paints an incredibly bleak portrait of the world as it is, the NFL and Tisch will serve as kind of a bellwether for how people like Tisch, who maintains his innocence and says the women he discussed with Epstein were of appropriate age, despite the fact that Epstein had been already convicted at a time when Tisch appeared to be contacting the businessman for dates, are treated by their respective entities. So there's that. Keep an eye on Goodell, because this is the slickness that keeps him employed on these kind of things. Goodell said, we have to look at everything. He was concerned, and they do have a code of conduct, but, shoveling this down the line, very, very helpful for him. And then we get to what has happened this year. And it's a very interesting angle on this that I had not heard before. Albert Breer said it yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show. Maybe part of the reason that we had basically a whiteout this year in the coach hiring cycle has to do with something that they call an acceleration program. The NFL put this in place some years ago and it was a great idea. It's to get minority assistant coaches familiar with the owners and vice versa. It's sort of like a cocktail party. They get together and they know them because, owners, and it's their right to do that, but owners hire who they want to hire and who they're comfortable with. And the owners are mostly white. I don't think there's a minority owner out there. Maybe there's one, the Minnesota Vikings maybe, but there's very few. And so that this year didn't happen. And Roger Goodell said, it didn't have anything to do with the hiring process. Well, maybe part of the reason that there was no acceleration program this year is the president, when he was inaugurated, made it very clear they wanted to do away with DEI. And Goodell was asked about that last year at the Super Bowl, and he said, no, we're committed to the Rooney Rule, and we want to make sure we have the best people, so we're gonna use that process to make sure we get the best candidates. Well, the acceleration program disappeared this year. Part of the reason was they wanted to curry favor with this administration because what just went through was the merger of ESPN and the NFL Network, a huge broadcast deal. And they needed FCC approval for that. They needed government regulators to give their smooch. And so they didn't want to do anything to piss off the president. And that could be, not 100%, but does sound logical. That's why they didn't have the acceleration program this year. As for what Goodell said, and this is what he always says when he's asked about these things, well, we're going to look at everything. We're going to have to examine this. We're going to have to see what we did and make it better. So this was Goodell's statement on the fact that 10 jobs opened up, and aside from Robert Saleh, who is a minority, the others were all white.
We need to continue to make progress, and I believe that. I believe diversity is good for us. I think we have become a more diverse league across every platform, including coaching. But we still have more work to do. There's got to be more steps. So we're reevaluating everything we're doing, including our accelerated program, including every aspect of our policies and our programs to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow rather than yesterday. So we need to be looking at that and sort of say, okay, why did we have the results this year? What is it that we can be doing in training or education, and that goes for not just the candidates, but also the clubs, and how we can try to continue to increase the opportunities and the outcomes ultimately.
This, I think, was his 20th State of the Game address. I would bet I could pull out 10 quotes on the same question over the years that will sound almost exactly the same. Yeah. We're going to look at everything. We're going to look at everything. Well, they looked at it, and this year they did a horrible job. I thought things were supposed to move forward. At one time, we had 9 minority head coaches. Now we have 4. This is Tony and Mike yesterday on PTI on that subject.
The Cardinals hired Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur for their opening, and the Raiders reportedly have decided to hire Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak for theirs, which should become official following the Super Bowl. Tony, which of these new head coaches will be entering the better situation?
So let's put ownership to the side for a second. I think that Kubiak is entering the better situation because he has the number 1 overall draft pick. So if there is a quarterback that he wants, if, for example, he wants Fernando Mendoza, he's going to be there at 1. And he's got this. You know who's working with the Raiders? Tom Brady. So Tom Brady can help tutor this particular quarterback.
It looked pretty bad this year. They got the number 1 pick for a reason.
Okay, but if the number 1 pick is that kid, who we both think is really good, he walks into the NFL with Tom Brady helping him and a great tight end, Brock Bowers, great tight end. Arizona has a mess at quarterback right now. You're close. You live there.
They get the 3rd
I mean, do they want Kyler Murray? Does Kyler Murray want them? And as hard as the AFC West is with the Chargers and Kansas City and Denver, the NFC West is harder with Seattle and the Rams and the 49ers. And that's my thinking on this.
I agree with you. I'm glad.
And there's no magic. There's no magic with the Arizona Cardinals. There's no anymore with the Raiders. But for decades, there was magic. For decades.
No, but not anymore. Okay. Not even with Tom Brady. And is he there enough to help restore that? I don't know. I'm glad you covered that so thoroughly, because I find myself not giving a damn about these 10 openings, because I sat there week after week or day after day, and I've come to the tally today that none of them are African-American coaches, that the league hasn't hired one, that there were 10 openings right now in this cycle. 10. 0 for 10. 0. And I know not everybody was fired. Mike Tomlin wasn't fired. He walked away. I get that. But, Tony, it seems to me that the NFL, much like much of the culture, has gone to a place that used to be, that we thought was gone away. And Roger Goodell, I don't know that he's the guy that Paul Tagliabue was, to get people on the phone and say, here's how we're going to do this. I don't know that Goodell's that guy. He has done that in certain areas, so let me not be completely dismissive. But the fact that it's 0 for 10.
I appreciate what you're saying. I'm also going to say this, except for, and I don't know any of these people other than Mike McCarthy and John Harbaugh, who certainly Harbaugh is deserving, and McCarthy won a Super Bowl, absolutely deserving. They are, most of them, they're entering the league with terrible teams, with the dregs of the league.
Yeah.
The only really bad team that didn't take a new coach this year, the Jets, took a new coach last year.
Yeah.
Okay?
And he, by the way, I'll let me know, is African American.
That's right. So when you look at when the stated question is who walked into the better situation, maybe neither walked into the better situation.
But you know what? You mentioned those guys that anybody would hire. A lot of these guys, like the new LaFleur, he may as well be Guy LaFleur to us. They have no resume.
No.
You
know what their resume is? They all work
related
for Sean
to somebody.
McVay. They all work for Sean
McVay.
McVay.
We'll see.
There's one great job. The Buffalo job was a great job. Baltimore might be a good job. Pittsburgh, I'm not sure. The others are awful.
You know the job I think might be a good job, and you seem to be slow to climb on board. I thought Atlanta's a good job.
I'm not certain.
And they played pretty well at the end and got rid of their coach.
Who was black, Raheem Morris. So there's that. It's an ongoing thing, and I'm sure we'll be back to the same Michigas next year. Speaking of Michigas, USA Today, this time of year they do these kind of lists. They put out the list of the top 60 players who have participated in Super Bowls. Now, there's some who would crack this list who didn't make a Super Bowl, but these are the top 60, Super Bowl performers is the way you would put it. These were guys who not only got into the Super Bowl, but they performed at a high level. Now we're at Super Bowl 60, so the list was 60. Top 5, you could probably do it yourself. Obviously, you put Tom Brady number 1. You put Joe Montana number 2. Jerry Rice number 3. Terry Bradshaw number 4. I think though I don't think anybody would argue with any of that. Charles Haley at 5 is interesting because I don't know if he's one of the great players, but he won 5 rings. Nobody else has, other than Brady, has 5 rings on the list. And number 6 is Doug Williams. Not just for the historic thing that he did, the first African-American quarterback to start a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. He was unbelievable. He threw 4 touchdown passes in the second quarter. So I would absolutely support putting Doug Williams at number 6. But here's what rankles me again as we talk Hall of Fame. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offensive linemen among the 60. So 60 players, only 5 offensive linemen. The top offensive lineman on this list is Gene Upshaw, who won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders, participated in 3. He's in the Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Famer. Okay. The next offensive lineman on this list is Joe Jacoby. Joe Jacoby is the only 2 Hogs that started on all 3 of the Super Bowl championship teams. Russ Grimm was a backup. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was a backup on the last one. Jeff Bostic, the center, he's was an excellent player, not a Hall of Famer. He started all 3, started all 4, as a matter of fact. They lost one. But Jake, his side, produced 2 of the greatest running performances in the history of the Super Bowl. John Riggins, 166 yards in Super Bowl 17. And in Super Bowl 22, Timmy Smith had 204 yards. So Jake is on this list at 48. The other linemen, there's only 3 other linemen on this list. Mike Webster passed away, a Hall of Famer for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Lane Johnson, who's still playing for the Eagles and will be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the great tackles to ever play. And the other is Randy Cross. And Randy Cross is there at 59, second to last on the list. Randy Cross was an excellent player, played 13 years just like Jake. He made 3 Pro Bowls, no All-Pro. Jake's resume is much better. Jake made 4 Pro Bowls, 2 of them All-Pro. In this case, Randy Cross, good, and benefits from playing for the 49ers, no question. 3 Pro Bowls, no All-Pros. Joe Jacoby, 3 Super Bowl rings. Okay, Cross maybe had 4, but 3 Super Bowl rings, 4 Super Bowl participations, led 2 of the greatest running performances of all time, and 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. It's mind-boggling. It's just insanity that he can't get in the Hall of Fame. And it looks like the 3 players who made the seniors list, Jake made it to the final 9. He did not make it to the final 3. But the final 3, with news today from Adam Schefter that Bob Kraft is not getting in, and we've known for a week that Bill Belichick isn't going to make it, that you're going to have Roger Craig, L.C. Greenwood, and Ken Anderson in. Ken Anderson made 1 Super Bowl, didn't win, lost to Joe Montana and the 49ers. L.C. Greenwood was part of that steel curtain. But let me ask you something. How much does it benefit you to be on the same line with Mean Joe Green and have linebackers like Jack Ham and Jack Lambert behind you? I would say quite a bit. You know, they can't account for everybody. And not that L.C. Greenwood wasn't a great player and didn't play a long time, but you put him on the Cleveland Browns, you put him even on the Buffalo Bills, you put him on any team. I don't know if he gets in. And Jake was, for the offensive line, what Mean Joe was, I think, for the defensive line of the Steelers. Is he as great a player all time as Mean Joe Green? Probably not. But my God, I mean, where does this end? Where does somebody make sense of this and look at the resume and say, this one slipped through the cracks. Let's make sure he gets in the Hall of Fame. We go through this again next year, and I'll be beating the drum again. But here we are. It's 2026. He's not getting any younger. And voters who saw him play, it's becoming further and further in the distance. All right, coming up, shift a little bit away from football, but stay in San Francisco. Larry Baer, Larry Baer, excuse me. Larry Baer will be Yogi's son. And actually, that's his real name, Larry Baer. Larry Baer, who is the San Francisco Giants president, on with Dan Patrick yesterday. Some very interesting things to say about Barry Bonds and the Dodgers. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So Dan Patrick has taken his show to San Francisco, and they are doing it right across from the Giants Stadium, right across from McCovey Cove. And they had yesterday on the president of the team, Larry Baer. I'm not familiar with him, but he was quite good. And they were talking about the ticklish situation with Barry Bonds. Like the Orioles, for example, they have statues of their Hall of Famers outside the stadium. That would be both Robinsons, Brooks, and Frank, as well as Jim Palmer and Earl Weaver, and, of course, Cal Ripken. And they, I'm sure, will continue to do that as they accumulate Hall of Famers. Giants have done that, of course, with Willie Mays and with Willie McCovey, and I forget, probably Juan Marichal is also in the Hall of Fame, I believe. And then you get to the Barry Bonds situation. Well, numbers-wise, of course, Barry Bonds would get in the Hall of Fame, but he's prominent in the Mitchell Report. He actually did fail a test, but said that no, he did not fail a test. Excuse me. He admitted that he had taken he'd used a cream which contained steroids, and he just didn't know what he was using. Somebody had given it to him. That's what it was. So, it's you look at him one year to the next. He's never hit 50 home runs in a season. All of a sudden, he hit 73. And he goes on to break the record that was set by Hank Aaron. We know it was dirty, right? I mean, you'd have to be a fool. So this was Larry Baer, the president of the Giants, with Dan Patrick on that ticklish situation where the numbers say Hall of Famer. And believe me, there are Hall of Fame voters that I know, like Tim Kurkjian, one of the most prominent, who says, yes, I would vote him in because we don't know who was using what. He says, I know that's a controversial stance, but I would put him in the Hall of Fame. But then there's the statue situation. If you're only going to put up statues of Hall of Famers outside the ballpark, then what do you do about Barry Bonds? This was Baer on that.
We've talked to with Barry about it, and we need to have that conversation and help figure it out. Yeah.
How do you come to grips with him being a Hall of Famer? If I say make the case for Barry Bonds, Hall of Famer.
Look, it's a tough one for us because, it's not a tough decision. We believe he absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame. There's criteria on the ballot, and it's hard for us to opine on him versus other players. We think it's a really difficult discussion, but by any objective measure, him and there are others that are not in the Hall of Fame that we believe are worthy in that era deserve to go, and that's something that's not going to get sorted out easily. Barry was from 93 to 99. Before the allegations, was, we believe, Hall of Fame worthy for his career in Pittsburgh and San Francisco. So, that we can't, it's just, you have a feel for it, and it's a subjective view, and Barry's a Giant. Barry's a great Giant, one of the greatest of all time, and we believe he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame and deserves a statue.
But that could be two separate things. Whether he's in the Hall of Fame and whether he gets a statue. And I would imagine if the Giants move forward and they go, look, he's an all-time leading home run hitter. Another argument that you get on that, which I would reject as well, and some Hall of Fame voters I know, like Tom Lavero, say, no, that doesn't work. That you look at Barry Bonds' numbers prior to when clearly he took steroids, and he's a Hall of Famer. He was going to be a Hall of Famer. If he never took any performance enhancers, he was going to be a Hall of Famer. So you do that. But I would think that if the Giants move forward and they say, well, the hell with it, we don't know whether he's getting in the Hall of Fame, but we believe he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, so we're putting up a statue of him. I think you're going to have an issue with that. And this guy Baer seems smart enough to understand that. But that's the conundrum that they face. Also with the Dodgers, he said something interesting about the Dodgers because they're obviously in an arms race with them. This is one of the great rivalries in sports, and the Dodgers have figured it out. They chased Shohei Ohtani, they chased Aaron Judge, they didn't get him. And the Dodgers get their guys, and they pay whatever it takes, and they pay the luxury tax, and they don't care, and they won the last two World Series. And even though, it was possible last year they were a couple outs away from losing, they could have lost. But they didn't, and they beat the Yankees the year before. And Baer said about their dominance, he says, it's good to have a dragon to slay. I thought that was a pretty good way to put it. He also said this about the Dodgers. Even though this is a bitter rivalry, This is what Baer relayed a story about how they are actually really partners in arms.
The Giants almost moved to Florida. This is 1992, and the team was financially on the ropes, and that's when our group came together to buy the team. But there was a deal signed to move the team to Florida. The number one supporter of the Giants staying in San Francisco, Peter
Dodgers.
O'Malley and the Dodgers, because we came out together from Brooklyn and New York in 1958, and this is a spectacular rivalry. So on the field, we try to beat each other's brains in. Off the field, we're actually, colleagues and partners in trying to grow the sport, and having opened up the sport in California, first two teams west of the Mississippi. The Giants and Dodgers it's a great rivalry. So we like the fans being energized and all, but we think it's really adds to the value of the sport having this rivalry.
Yeah, Baer is right. Walter O'Malley wanted to move the Dodgers first. They couldn't get a new ballpark built in Brooklyn. They needed something bigger than Ebbets Field, and he saw the future that he move his team out to Los Angeles, and although they didn't move into the stadium that they're in now in Chavez Ravine. There was an appetite for baseball out there, and they played their early games in the Coliseum. Crazy. You look at some of they could get 90,000 people in there, but it was built for football, not for baseball. And he knew he needed another team to go out there, so he convinced Horace Stoneham to take the New York Giants at the same time. So they both left New York, Dodgers, Brooklyn, and the Giants, the Polo Grounds, same year. Both left after the 1957 season and moved out to San Francisco. Stoneham got the short end of the stick because, no pun intended, or pun intended, he moved to Candlestick Park, which the day they went there, it must have been really good temperatures because it was always freezing there, freezing cold, and the wind was blowing in and all that. And they got a great ballpark now, but they spent most of their existence in Candlestick Park. So they were partners when they went out there. And yeah, that deal, I remember that they were going to go to Tampa. They built that Tropicana Dome, which had the roof blown off a year ago or a year and a half ago, whatever it was. So we had the Rays playing at George Steinbrenner Field, the Yankee Spring Training Complex, this past year. And I believe the roof is done, so they're moving back this season. But that's where they were going to go. And that's always been a bad place to play. I wonder if the Giants, if they did take that deal and go play in Tampa, if they'd even stayed there, they might have moved again. And maybe even gone back to San Francisco. Who knows? Like the Raiders, the Raiders ping-ponging back and forth between Los Angeles and Oakland, and now they're in Vegas. So, I think that's a good thing that they stay together in that. And sports needs rivalries. It's great when both the Giants and the Dodgers are good, and both teams are willing to spend money. Dodgers a little bit more, maybe. And Los Angeles, a more attractive place to play than San Francisco. Though San Francisco is a great city, so I thought that was interesting. So he's very bright and really has some really good stories to tell. Larry Baer, who is the president of the San Francisco Giants, coming up. Got the insiders dropping by Dan Patrick's show yesterday. Dianna Russini of The Athletic, who's become as well-connected as anybody, and Albert Breer of SI.com, who had some interesting things to say about the Hall of Fame voting process, which apparently has left out Bill Belichick and Bob Kraft this year. We'll get to more on that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Sports makes strange bedfellows. Would you have ever put together Barry Trotz, who was the coach when the Caps won the Stanley Cup in 2018, and Nick Saban, arguably the greatest college football coach of all time, together? Would you have ever involved those two people in the same story? Believe it or not, Trotz, who's now the general manager in Nashville, is stepping down after the trade deadline next month and helping to lead the search for new GM, Nick Saban. Nick Saban is an investor with the Nashville Predators. Now, I'm not sure that Nick Saban knows what a blue line is. He may, but his expertise is the goal line, not the blue line, and so he's going to be involved now. Look, any type of management situation, you would want to have Nick Saban involved. He clearly knows how to manage people. And I don't know if there was any interaction between Nick Saban and Barry Trotz, but maybe it didn't go well. Maybe Saban's the one who's kind of pushing him out the door. I think Trotz was always a respected coach. He had a long run as the coach in Nashville. He'd been there 15 years before he came here, and then he was on the hot seat that last year. People forget that. But there was a game I think they played in Minnesota. If they lost that game, they were ready to make a coaching change. And they won the game. They kept Trotz, and he went on to win the Stanley Cup. And now Nick Saban and Barry Trotz. Again, I would not have ever put them together. All right, off we go. Another Super Bowl. This is, by the way, last night was what they used to call Media Day. Years and years ago, when all this hoo-ha started, they would bring the players to the playing field on Tuesday of Super Bowl week. Teams used to arrive on Monday. Now they come in Saturday, Sunday. And Monday, they're ready to go. And Monday night now is when you have these mass interview sessions. And they don't do it in the hotel room anymore or in the stadium. They do it in some big ballroom somewhere. And, the same deal. Players have tables and podiums and people gather around and ask. There's no news coming out of this. There's nothing that's come out of this. And some years ago, I remember being at one, last media day I covered would have been 2013 when the Ravens played the 49ers in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And the big story there was Ray Lewis and deer antler spray, which supposedly helped him overcome his arm injury. And, he denied all that, and I don't think he was ever tested for it. But that was the only real story. There are no real stories. And so we had all that. We had all these media people in the rooms yesterday, last night. Some of it televised on the NFL Network. I didn't watch any of it. I'm not going to watch any of the Pro Bowl Michigas tonight where they play flag football. But it seems like the more coverage you have of it, the less news that comes out of it. There was Roger Goodell, the news conference, if you're with us in the last hour, and if you weren't, you can get it at ESPN630DC.com a little bit later on. There was some news coming out of that, but nothing from the players, nothing at all. Dianna Russini has become one of the top insiders in the NFL. You may remember she was at Channel 4 here. It's got to be 8-9 years. She went to ESPN, did very well there. And the Athletic said, we not only need somebody like you who can break news, she hustles. She knows people. She works the phones. She's excellent at what she does. And they said, we need somebody like you. And to help raise our presence, we need you to do interviews. And she does that. She goes on these various national shows, local shows. She's out there, and she's got real connections with coaches, front office people, owners. And she was on Dan Patrick's show yesterday, and he asked her, has there ever been a coach who's yelled at you? And she said, yes, Mike Vrabel.
It was a genuine yell. It was the year he was out, and I was at the Senior Bowl, and I'd had 2 back-to-back dinners with general managers. So it was like a double booked, but I had to make it work. And I had the same conversation with both these GMs, and they were asking me, why do I think that Mike Vrabel didn't have a job? Like, why isn't he a head coach right now? And I said, I don't know. I was like, I covered him a lot in Tennessee. I thought he was collaborative. He's a good leader. Players love him. I don't know. And they both offered up that they thought that he was too physically intimidating. So the New York Post sees this, or excuse me, I go on a podcast. The New York Post hears it. And it went from an intimidating figure that is perhaps scaring owners to, like, Mike Vrabel's too fat to get a job. So he calls me. He's like, why would you ever report that? That's ridiculous. That's not even true. I'm like, are you asking me if I think you're fat? So that was not fun because I just think, he didn't want
For the record, you weren't calling him fat.
No. I was really just relaying
like chubby or chunky maybe, but not fat.
No, I didn't even do that.
Oh.
I was relaying to, I think it was Chase on the podcast that, hey, I was basically doing what I do all the time. Hey, I had these conversations with 2 general managers, and they told me this is why they think Vrabes doesn't have a job, and I just think that's interesting because the guy's so physically large. It's going to prevent an owner from hiring him. That's stupid.
Paulie, do you have the article?
Yeah, I found the article from February last year, 2 years ago. Mike Vrabel, the headline, Mike Vrabel's physical appearance may have been too intimidating and turned teams off. Dianna Russini credited.
Which was the truth of what it was. But I'm glad that you asked me about getting yelled at. I probably spend more time on the phone arguing with people in the league because I'm sure you guys are aware and you know this well. Everyone is so paranoid about information and they want control over it. And I like to dig, and sometimes I like to poke around in places where people don't want to be poked. And you have to have an ironclad stomach in this league to deal with it because there's a lot of yelling going on in my house, and it's on the other line. My husband jokes all the time. He's like, you fight with more people in football than we fight. And I'm a different person, obviously. Like I have to be different with these guys because they want to push you around and they want a story told a certain way. But the truth is the truth.
Do you think we're playing a Super Bowl outside the United States in 5? If I said 5.5 years, the over/under.
Yeah.
Because everything's gambling. So.
It is. I do.
Where?
I think. I want it in Italy, but
Yeah.
See, now everyone's for it.
We'll have it at the Coliseum.
Our friends Big Cat and PFT, they give me a hard time because they know I'm all about the international Super Bowl game because I just think that would be such a great experience because they obviously want it here because it's an American sport, and I get that too. But why not do it in a place that like Tokyo even, where there could be so much growth and it could be popular. The problem is it's just not as popular. There's not going to be a lot of fans there. I don't think a lot of people are going to take trips to go see it. I don't believe so.
I think you have to do it in London. I think you have to be fair.
Start there
to
because,
London.
Because hey, we started it here, we grew it here. Yeah. No, that would make sense.
And people would go to London. It's not crazy travel to get over there. So I could see them doing that.
That's Dianna Russini yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show. Some breaking news now, and it looks like Cliff Kingsbury, unless something crazy happens, looks like Cliff Kingsbury is going to be left out this year. There were reports that he was up for the Giants' offensive coordinator job under John Harbaugh. He's left out of the hiring cycle for head coach, so he would wind up there as the offensive coordinator. But now reports from Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network that the Giants are hiring Matt Nagy, former head coach of the Chicago Bears, and he's got some history. They connect to Andy Reid as does John Harbaugh. They worked together, I guess, with the Eagles many years ago. So this is the latest that Matt Nagy, not Cliff Kingsbury, is going to become the offensive coordinator for the New York Giants. We also had the Adam Schefter report earlier today that not only is Bill Belichick not getting in the Hall of Fame this year, neither is the owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft. And that would mean that the three senior candidates are all going to make it. The players, Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, and L.C. Greenwood, get in. But that is not going to it's not going to include the greatest, or at least the winningest Super Bowl coach of all time, and second on the all-time wins list in Bill Belichick, and the owner who has more Super Bowl rings than any other owner in 6 of them and could get number 7 on Sunday, not getting in as well. So it leads to the question of, geez, who's picking this? If you got the greatest coach and the greatest owner there and they're not getting in, what's going on? Albert Breer, NFL Network, on with Dan Patrick yesterday. Not NFL Network, excuse me, SI.com, Albert Breer, with his analysis of what has been happening here with this process and clearly how it needs to change.
I think the main problem now is the seniors, by definition, are almost last chance candidates, right?
Yeah.
So you almost have, if you're a voter, you almost have to treat those as, I'm going to get one shot to put this guy in. Whereas with Bill Belichick, with Robert Kraft, you might get multiple shots. You've already gotten multiple shots to put Kraft in, right? You're probably going to get multiple shots to put Belichick in. And so to me, the way I would vote it if I had a vote is I would look at each of them as yes, no. And if there are 4 yeses, I take the 3 most emphatic yeses, right? I think the way other people are interpreting this is, well, this might be my last chance to get this guy in, so I'll get around to that guy later. And I just think so much of that being left to interpretation is sort of the problem here.
But do you think it's a coincidence that Belichick didn't get voted in? Or is this a small group effort?
You mean like there's people banding together against him?
Yeah.
I don't know that. So I talked to a handful of voters. This came up in New England on one of the shows I do. And a producer asked me, hey, could you just look into the chances Kraft and Belichick have of getting in? So I poked around and I called a handful of voters I knew, really well and trust. And every one of them said, well, Belichick, there's no question. It's going to be 50 for 50. And so I started looking at Kraft's candidacy then as okay, if there's 150 votes, because that's what it would be. Everybody gets to vote for 3. There are 50 voters. And Belichick gobbles up 50 of them. Well, then it's going to be harder for any of the other 4 guys to get in. And so I think for a lot of the voters, it was genuinely stunning that Bill didn't get in. And they were surprised it wasn't unanimous. So there's some divide there on the way that people are interpreting this. And I was shocked. I mean, I can't believe 11 people didn't vote for him, And I'm normally one of these guys. I look at that, that's a hard job. You know what I mean? And you've got people's legacies in your hands. And that's a really difficult, how do you separate one person from the next? That's all. So I've been hesitant in the past to say, yeah, that guy's an idiot for voting this way. Because I don't have a vote, so I don't, I haven't been in that spot. But this one to me is so overwhelmingly obvious. It's the greatest coach of all time.
Nobody's getting in first ballot. No coach is getting in first ballot.
I mean,
after this,
yeah,
no one.
I mean, I think it's ridiculous that Mike Shanahan's not in. You know what I mean? And I said this last year. I think it's he won 2 Super Bowls. He's been out for over a decade now, and half the league is running his offense.
Yeah, that's true.
And more than half of that group of offenses is run by people who worked for him. You know what I mean? So you go down and you look at his tree. I mean, it's right there with and he's part of the Walsh tree, I guess, right? Because he worked for Seifert.
Yeah.
But it's it's as big as the Walsh tree was, or bigger. And his influence on the game has been so immense. So I look at Shanahan as that is so simple for me. And Bill won 6. I don't know. It's crazy to me because I do think it's one sport. I agree players should get in over coaches generally. But it is, having covered the league for 21 years, I think it's the sport where the coaches have the biggest influence in winning and losing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's 18 games, 17 games, and then you got the playoffs, and yes, you're going to make a bigger impact week in and week out. I find it strange that we're now parsing what was Belichick's record without Brady? And I go,
right.
Did we do that to any other coach in history where we did this? And the answer is no. And if you said, hey, he cheated, okay. And if that's your reason that he cheated, fine. Just tell me. But don't vote for him next year because he still cheated.
And that's what the first ballot thing kills me.
I know.
It just kills me because I'm all right, so now you're the judge, jury, and executioner. To me, it's a yes or no question. It should be hard to get in, right? And so to me, it's not I'm not ranking the Hall of Famers. It's either yes or no. And if I have to vote no on somebody because there's a limit on how many people I can vote for, then so be it, right? If there are 7 deserving guys and I can vote for 5, and that means I'm leaving 2 deserving guys off, and that's the reason why they're not first ballot, so be it. But it shouldn't be, well, I don't view him the same way as this other guy. It should be the 5 most emphatic yeses if you have 5 votes. And in this case, I don't know how you could look at that list. And it was L.C. Greenwood, Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, Robert Kraft, and Bill Belichick, and say he's not one of the 3 most deserving guys in that list. That makes no sense.
That's Albert Breer. And again, with the news, this was before this news from Schefter today that Kraft didn't make it. The 3 players, looks like they did. Anderson, Craig, and L.C. Greenwood. The way it works, 50 voters. Each of them can vote for 3. So the 5 names that were there, Anderson, Craig, Greenwood as players, and then you throw in a coach in Belichick and an owner in Kraft, and what do? And I think most of the ones, they said that there were, obviously, there were at least 11 that didn't vote for Kraft and didn't vote for Belichick. And they were probably voters who said, well, gee, these players, last shot, those are slam dunks. Bill Belichick, Bob Kraft, they're going to go. Jerry Jones has been in the Hall of Fame for like 15 years, something like that. And his last Super Bowl win was over 30 years ago. Kraft did collect ring number 7 on Sunday. Well, that's where we are, and that's why the system has to change. And they have to put in more players. It's a big backlog. And as I mentioned, Joe Jacoby named today, USA Today, named the top 60 Super Bowl performers. This is Super Bowl 60 coming up Sunday. Joe Jacoby is one of 5 offensive linemen on the list. The only offensive lineman that ranks higher is Gene Upshaw at 41. Jacoby's at 48. Mike Webster's in the Hall of Fame, as is Upshaw. He's 51. Lane Johnson, who will be in the Hall of Fame for the Eagles, is 52. And Randy Cross, 59, is the only one, along with Jake, who is not in the Hall of Fame. And I would put Jake over him in that he's got 4 Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pros and the 3 Super Bowl rings. Cross may have the 4 with the 49ers, but I would take Jacoby over him any day. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.